The biggest problem we have now is corruption. This corruption is not happening on the moon. It's happening in the district, sub-county, and the constituency. I have opened a war on the corrupt, so make sure that you are not in my gun sight. We cannot let our people down. That is a post on the X account of the President of the Republic of Uganda. Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of the Inter-University Debates on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today, we take the conversation to a subject rather sad on my part, and I wait to hear from the panel I have today. We are discussing corruption and in the extensions of what looks rather shabby from some of our leaders in the country coming in with comments, statements, reactions, views, opinions about corruption and the corrupt. We know in the last couple of weeks and months we've had a fight by security agencies. We've seen a series of individuals arrested and taken to courts of law. Some of them are in prison, others are out, others are anticipating to be arrested in the recent soon. And when you have leaders come out to make statements that are rather, in my view, reckless in that regard, it is something not to celebrate. But we wait to hear more from my panel and what they have to say on assessing such statements from our leaders. And the young people joining me on that conversation are really distinguished and knowledgeable about matters of this country, but also prospecting leaders of this country. And I'll give a minute to each to introduce themselves, and later we get into the depth of the show. I will start from my extreme left. Gentlemen.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. My name is Kinobere Andrew Marvin, and it's always a pleasure to be here discussing different issues. And once again, I look up to a very, very interactive discussion on this very pertinent topic, that affects our country very much. And once again, thank you for having me. And to the viewers, I'm glad to be back again.
Thank you, Kinobere. Next to Kinobere is a lady. Lady, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, our dear viewers. I'm called Asiimwe Mackline from the Islamic University in Uganda. So glad to be here and share my views or ideas on the different issues that are happening right now in our country. It is not, we are not in good times, if I'm to say, but thank you so much for hosting me, Philip.
Yes, you're most welcome, Mackline. And last but not least is a gentleman from, is it southwestern Uganda? Is that the region?
Yes, Western Uganda.
Talk to us.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Philip, for yet another moment. I'm so grateful that I am here to discuss matters of national importance, matters that will build our country, matters that will make us not regret in the future, matters that will make us not have an explanation to our children, like we are demanding explanations from our parents. So I hope it is going to be really a fruitful discussion and an interactive one.
Thank you. And indeed, if you're asking your parents questions, then certainly they will ask you related questions in the future. But before we get into the conversation, I want to join the world and on behalf of the civic space community to send our sympathies and condolences to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We had a tragic incident because of climate change and particularly heat waves. We had very many brothers, comrades in the Islamic faith who had traveled for the Hijr, about 1,000 deaths because of the heat, and many of them are hospitalized and others injured in different ways. We send our sympathies and we hope those that are still alive can be saved. Those that died, may you rest in peace, and we hope for the better. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, corruption, corruption, corruption. I want to start with the lady. I know in this country we believe so much in ladies first, yes. First of all, when you listen to these comments coming out and whatever is happening in the country, what is in your mind as we stand today about this country and corruption? Those two words, Uganda, corruption. What do you think about?
So, first of all, to me, corruption and Uganda. The word corruption and Uganda seem a little bit inseparable to me, because we've had corruption from time immemorial and nothing has been done. And our leaders we vote, should I say the ideal leaders, because we vote someone knowing they're going to communicate, they're going to act effectively, which they don't, and they are the very corrupt leaders. So Uganda and corruption is still in Uganda because of our leaders. We hope we have ideal leaders, yet in their conduct, the conduct is not for an ideal leader. So corruption and Uganda are inseparable.
Corruption and Uganda are inseparable. What a strong word to use about our country. Inseparable. Kinobere,
Yes, please.
when you listen to that, what gets to you?
Thank you very much, Philip. You see, as you said, you cannot speak about Uganda. You cannot speak about this country. Even when you go out, you cannot speak about Uganda and fail to speak about the gross corruption in this country. You know, but corruption is not new. Corruption has always been there. And corruption, in fact, even when you're talking about one of the biggest economies in this world, that is the United States of America, you know, at the beginning of the second industrial revolution, you know, corruption was there, you know, and that is when we saw the likes of Rockefeller, the ones of oil, and JP Morgan in banking, you know. That is when they started rising up so much, because they were being fueled by politicians, yes, and no, they were being fueled by politicians, and in turn, they were funding politicians in order to make for them policies that favored them, you know. However, with the coming of Roosevelt, President, His Excellency, the late, he introduced policies, you know, that that were intended to kind of bar all that was happening, so that they would be able to put the economy of the Americans back in the place where it's supposed to be. So when you talk about corruption, corruption is not new, and that one we must agree, you know, because corruption, to me, I believe it's more of human nature, you know. It's human nature, and it's not about the leadership. It's not about.
In other words, everyone is corrupt.
Everyone can be corrupt. Not everyone is corrupt, but anyone has the potential of being corrupt. However, you know, where we always draw the line is what is best, you know, what is in the best interest, you know, because we have had countries that have done away with leaders. We had Chad, where they overthrew, was it President? It was called President Hussein. At that time, they overthrew him with allegations of him being overly involved in exploitation of oil, you know. But the corruption did not stop. It actually became worse, you know. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that corruption is actually bigger than leaders. It is bigger than leaders, you know. So to me, when you speak about corruption in this country, as she has said, it is something that has been there, and it is a vice that is growing. And if we do not address it in the way we're supposed to address it, it is not going to stop anytime soon. In fact, if I must say, it is just beginning.
Wow. Kuule, corruption is human nature, corruption is everywhere, and it is a vice that is actually at the start, according to him. Is that a view you contend with?
Yes, Mr. Phillip, I need to agree with my colleagues on the panel that when you're taught to define Uganda and you fail to include corruption in your definition, then you're having a wrong definition of Uganda.
Yes, Professor.
Yes, when you're taught to define Uganda and you fail to include the word corruption in your definition of Uganda, if I am the one marking your answer, I'll give you 0-0. Because you will not be actually not understanding Uganda. At the moment when you talk about Uganda, every person who has heard of Uganda will think about corruption by the fact that you mentioned the word Uganda.
Cool. Uganda is a very beautiful country. We have beautiful sceneries, nature, physical features. We have beautiful stories to tell of our country, the cultures, and so on. When you say Uganda and corruption, if you don't have the two, is a wrong definition, what exactly are you saying?
You see, Mr. Phillip, when you look at corruption itself, it is basically something that is brought up because poverty of the mind. People are physically rich, people have money physically. Look at people having nice cars, having beautiful buildings, having expensive lifestyle, but with a poor mind. With a poor mind. So Uganda, when you look at Uganda and we talk about corruption, Uganda, yes, it is a very beautiful country with beautiful sceneries, but with people, specifically leaders, with a poor mind. However, when you look at the 1907 Russian Revolution, there is an interesting scenario whereby Lenin and colleague Bolsheviks had actually given up because in March of the 1907 they had organized a revolution that was actually failure. But in October 1907, people gained momentum. People gained momentum, leaving alone the failure that had occurred in March. These people saw that there is need for them to gain momentum and they can talk about what is actually eating them up. Apparently in Uganda, it is evident that Uganda we have two categories of people. We have oppressed and oppressor. That is evident. And it is unfortunate that...
Who is oppressing who?
Of course, in aspect of corruption, we know that the corrupt are oppressing the citizens. Because when you look at corruption...
These corrupt are not citizens of this country?
You know, the corrupt are citizens of the country, but these are leaders with a poor mind. These are leaders with a poor mind, greedy mindset, that whatever is in the country should be for them. Because we are looking at a scenario whereby corruption is dividing us into two groups. One group, that is the oppressed, is holding shoulders to continue oppressing the citizens, the local citizen who really deserve better resources, who deserves adequate services. Mr. Phillip, allow me hint on the recent comments made by the Right Honorable Speaker. I don't know whether I'm not offending someone.
Yes, we are going to get to the comments, but I want us to first understand this thing called corruption in the country. Every time we talk about corruption, what comes to the mind of a Ugandan, ordinary like myself, is someone misused government money, someone, maybe there was money meant for a road and this person made it personal money, maybe there was money for a hospital. Mackline,
Yes, please.
help us understand the term corruption in the Ugandan context. What actually happens in this country?
So corruption in the Ugandan context, I would say, is where our leaders take advantage of the powers they have and the authorities and misuse it to their advantage. How? They are given money to make roads and they don't make them. Kampala has the worst roads and it is the capital city. It has the worst roads. They are given money for the budget and they want to increase. And that is at the expense of a taxpayer, Mackline. So by the time my leader does something like that, it is me going to suffer, the taxpayer, because now my taxes are going to be increased. Why? They will end up saying some roads are not made, others are not, need repair, and yet it was, they in fact corrupted the money. The money was there, but they corrupted it. So corruption is where those leaders like they do things at their advantage and things that, you know, the problem is that our leaders do not get satisfied with what they have. You know, if I ask any of you, like, how much money would you want to be contented? I don't know if you know the money, but even when you have the money, you have the cars, you have the houses.
I'm sure you've heard of the law of unending desires
Yes.
of humanity. So
It is there. But then at least at some point, if you have everything, you have the life, you have the money, you have to be contented. But then they're not contented. That is why they keep on. You see, he's going to go and get 1 billion. And when he gets 1 billion, you may ask, what is he going to use it for? He's going to build houses. He's going to build maybe arcades, malls. But then when he gets a chance of getting another 1 billion, he will still get the same.
well, Andrew,
Yes, please.
you see, she talks about contentment and our leaders. You see, these are people we Ugandans elect and put into these offices. Nonetheless, there are some who are appointed or just find
The
themselves
ex-officios.
wherever. But many of them, about 2 million Ugandans, are elected into the various positions they get into. And we put them there to serve us. And I assume whatever they are doing is serving us. Where do we lose the line of serving and we end up in the scenarios she's talking about, management for a hospital, and maybe there is no medicine in that particular hospital? Where do we lose it? Is it the laws that talk to them? Is it morality? Is it, what is it?
Thank you very much, Philip. I'm glad that you've asked me that question because I was going to comment something about it. My two colleagues have talked about the leaders and the corruption. But in Uganda, there is no dictated leader except those ones that are maybe appointed by the president and these other people that, other offices that are given powers by acts of parliament to actually appoint certain people. But who puts these leaders into power? It is us, the people. And funny enough is that the current people who we are complaining about, the current people we are saying that are the most corrupt, these were once leaders we looked up to. And these are people that have been sent back to their leadership positions year in, year out, term after term.
I mean, 3 years ago we had an election.
Exactly. So what does this speak to us, Philip? We are in this together as a country. In as much as there are people who are benefiting from this corruption, yes, we are in this together as a country. Let us suffer because of the decisions that we make recklessly, you know, because we cannot keep on sending people year in, year out, and then afterwards you complain that the people who we make noise for, the people whose t-shirts we don on every election period, are the ones torturing us. And then another term comes, we give them more 5 years to plan the resources. That means that we want, you know. And someone will argue and say that, but for me, when I went, I voted for this person, but they didn't go through. That doesn't matter because the majority decided, you know. That is what is called the social contract, you know, that us as the people, we agree that we are going to send this one person to represent our interests. So if that person doesn't represent our interests, that means all of us, whether you voted for them or not, as long as the majority say that this is the person representing us, we're in this together. So where have we lost it as a country? She made a very good statement and talked about how you can have everything and still you find that someone is still plundering more resources, you know, not contented, you know. There's a very good saying, more money, more problems. You know, that is very true. That is very true. And we cannot run away from that because, as I said, it's human nature. Because, Philip, we may say that the corruption we are having today is because of maybe the low payment. Let me just give an example. For example, the police officers, because they're also very corrupt. That's another debate for another day, you know. maybe the security forces and the RDCs and the LC chairpersons.
The president is quoted saying they have, for the last 3 years, they have been winning the award of most corrupt in the country.
That one is very true. That one I agree with the president. Because, you see, we cannot make that argument that it's because of the money these people are earning. Because even the people who are earning the most money, you know, people who are earning above anyone else's pay are still corrupt. You know, we have seen managers of banks. You know, we have seen people in civil service who are earning very good amounts of money still being corrupt. You know, we have seen people in economies that are way larger than that of Uganda still being corrupt, having corruption allegations. You know, so the argument cannot be that it's because of the money, it is because they are not being paid well. That cannot be the argument, because even the people who are being paid the highest money are still corrupt, you know. So going back to what I was saying, where have we lost it? It's morality. And for me, Philip, I believe that all this starts from the grassroots, you know, because if we all go in with this mindset, you know, in Uganda there's a mindset, you eat from where you work from, you know. So that is the mindset people are growing up with. You know, someone is in school,
there's a
but
Uganda proverb that says, "Akuwa obwami, akuwa kulya."
You see those kinds of things. So we all go in with this mindset that I am supposed to benefit from my job, because if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it. You know. So now, is that a problem of being paid little money? That is a problem that is starting from the grassroots.
Wow, thank you. Kuule,
Yes.
you see, he says something so interesting. We are in this together. And this takes me to Luengo. There was an event a few days ago, and very many leaders attended that particular event. Among them was the Honorable Chinyamatama, the Honorable Daudi Kavanda, and the Right Honorable Speaker, Anita Among. The comments that came out, among the many, some of the comments that are highlighted at that event was the Honorable Chinyamatama getting to the podium, and she says, "We hear your MP is involved in something out there, but if it is true and indeed she took something from wherever she was not supposed to, she says she always shared with you." And there were massive cheers from the audience. We are in this together, not so?
You know, Mr. Phillip, as I get to that Luengo incident, my comrade has actually talked about something that, you know, he was trying to read that we vote for these people. I would love to disagree with him to some extent. That one, we need to appreciate the fact that, you know, we are appreciating in a negative way, and you know, the appreciation is supposed to be a tearful appreciation, that we are in a dictatorial leadership. And I would love to assert this, that we have leaders that were not voted for by the citizens, but those leaders are declared winners of elections.
How so?
It is evident. It is evident that we have leaders, you know, that are actually in parliament. Others are occupying even bigger offices. Look at the president himself. If we agree that the president won elections in 2021, then we actually don't know the state we are living in.
He did not win?
He did not win, but he's the one ruling.
See, Philip,
You
maybe, sorry to interject, but you see, when we are talking about certain things, yeah, we need to be very, 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 very particular with the facts we are dealing with. You see, after elections, yeah, in as much as we may say that this person did not win an election, you know, if that person has not been challenged and this person has not been declared by court otherwise, yes, of course, the judiciary and everything that happens, that's a story for another day, you know. But that
Yes,
we cannot rely on that. We cannot rely on that to tolerate what we are having, you know. We cannot say that because these people cheated their way into all of this. We're now separating ourselves from what is happening. That cannot be the case.
Yes, maybe still highlighting on that as a supplement to what colleague is saying. We need to. It is not something that we should rely on, but we should not do away with it. We should have it in mind that we're having leaders who forcefully made sure that they be there to lead us. I will give an example. Look at the Right Honourable Speaker of the Parliament. Yes, you know, someone threatens opponents that are willing to compete with her. You get? So these are the people who are hungry for power. Like I told you that we have people, our leaders are actually having a poor, you know, it is a poor mindset. They are rich physically, but very poor in their minds. And that's what is leading us to this corruption, because we have people with a poor mindset, people who are greedy, people hungry for power, not putting at the front patriotism, Pan-Africanism, which are the values that could actually ensure that we have equitable services, the values that could ensure that we have, you know, the local citizen gaining services and benefiting from the government. Back to the Luengo remarks, Mr. Phillip, from there I will make a few observations. One is that we should be aware that, like I said previously, that we have been divided into two, we have been classified into two categories. The first category is the one of the corrupt leaders. The second category is the one of the oppressed citizens. Now, the difference is that these corrupt leaders, they are standing in solidarity with one another in their corruption. Because a Right Honourable Speaker of the Parliament, you know, this is something that is under investigation, as they claim, about Sisinamuju. But the Right Honourable Speaker of the Parliament of the country stands on a podium and defends someone that is a suspect of corruption. Not actually, you know, they have not yet convicted her, but it is, you know, there is a way it tempers with the dignity of the entire country and the entire house. And last time I was here, I said that we actually don't have a parliament, because if the Right Honourable Speaker who is heading the parliament is openly, in broad daylight, shamelessly stands on a podium and conspicuously defends corruption.
You see, like you said, the Right Honourable Speaker, yes, she leads that institution,
yes,
and the Honourable Sisinamuju is her, one of the people below, yes, her, so she has a duty to defend.
Yes, okay, as we look at that, I will link you to the tweet that was made by the President after those remarks. So when you look at President's tweet, in response to the remarks made by the Parliament, we are looking at a disorganized Parliament. I mean a disorganized government, whereby Parliament is thinking in its own line and the Cabinet is having its own thinking. And trust me, there is no way we can have things run rightly if we're having a disorganized government, whereby one arm thinks like corruption is something that can be forgiven, and the other arm thinks that corruption is something that we should fight. So that is evident that we're having a disorganized government, and we should not expect much from such a disorganized government. Because, Mr. Phillip, as you come in, we need to appreciate that everyone in the Parliament has been either directly or indirectly involved in a corruption scandal.
Everyone.
Every member of the Parliament of Uganda is either directly or indirectly involved in corruption. Be it Honorable Sekikubo, who is trying to move a motion of censoring commissioners. He is either directly or indirectly involved in corruption. That is the gist of the matter. That is how dirty our Parliament is. And that makes us think that we shouldn't rush to judge on these actions that are being made, arresting of MPs, the comments made by the Speaker. All we should know is that there is something that we're not viewing. There is a scene that is, you know, there is a movie that is, I don't know how I'm going to relate it. There is something that is being acted behind the scenes. For us, we are looking at how they are acting. Someone is saying that I'm fighting corruption. Someone is saying corruption can be forgiven. But there is some other activity, there's some other action behind scenes that is actually being made by these two heads of the different organs of the government. So I need to make this clear, Philip, as you come in. One, the citizens of Uganda should understand that we are fighting corruption, but the corruption that we are fighting has leaders, and these leaders are they are ready to stand in solidarity with one another to ensure that they perpetuate corruption, to ensure that they steal, to an extent that I remember commenting about the impoverishment strategy. So this is all about the impoverishment strategy. So the corrupt leaders are ready to stand in solidarity, defend one another, do what they can do to ensure that they make sure that they succeed and perpetuate their corruption so that their impoverishment strategy can be a successful one.
Thank you. Mackline, when you have an event in a constituency of someone allegedly being tried for corruption, bribery, whatever it can be, and you have an activity, one, to celebrate her, attended by high-profile officials, and it comes out with high-profile statements like those ones. What does it even mean in our leadership structure?
So first of all, our leadership structure is, like he said, they are now standing in solidarity. Because imagine you're living in a glass house. You have to make a lot of friends that they don't throw stones at your glass house. You understand? So that is what they are doing. Living in solidarity together.
Who is in this glass house?
Of course, it is the Honorable Speaker of Parliament. Because I imagine she has a bell of corruption around her neck. So she has to support it and forgive it, because she says corruption can be forgiven. If your child does bad, you punish them and bring them back. So that is being, like, they are all in solidarity at the expense of us, their voters.
You see, morally, as Africans, I know in many communities, we believe in forgiveness, but also even as Christians, if someone wrongs, they are dealt with at a certain level, then you can forgive, not so?
Yes, you can forgive, but then if it is true that they are fighting corruption, those people have to lead as examples. So you forgive them until when? Because if you forgive them, those are the very people that are going to come back in 2026.
Then the citizen has a duty.
And the citizen, of course, has a duty, but they will be lured or swayed one way or the other to still vote for those people or don't. But to me, I believe they should be punished or done away with.
Well, Andrew.
Yes, please.
High-profile leaders in the country to the level of number 3 in power in this country, when they come out with statements, according to the two panelists, they are saying she and the other leaders are standing in solidarity with fellow people in the glass house. What does it mean for the leadership?
You see, Philip, thank you very much. You see, Philip, the most upside thing is that these are veteran politicians. Politicians that are supposed to be mentoring and are building the leadership in this country, because leadership is not like a movie which starts and it ends. This is something that is continuous, because Uganda is not going to end with the NRM regime. Yes, because we have seen so many regimes come in and go, you know, and it is very bad if we do not have a continuance of leadership, you know. So it is very sad that the veteran politicians in this country that we once looked up to, you know, are the ones that are now doing the things that disgust us so much, you know. But Philip, those comments that were made are a result of an incompetent and incoherent administration that is happening in this country, you know, because you cannot have people of high profile, as you've named them. Someone else may disagree, you know, high profile people coming out to make highly reckless statements, you know, unnecessary and in public,
uncalled for.
you know. It is very, very, very bad, you know, and that speaks to a lot, Philip. That speaks to a lot. This country is losing sense of direction, because we cannot now say, because when you talk about the people and their glass house, as she said, this thing is bigger than that glass house. Allow me to say this. When we talked about the corruption allegations that were surrounding the August House, and that is in particular the office of the Speaker, so many high-profile leaders came out to say that, oh, this is as a result of the homosexuality bill that the Honorable was part of, the Right Honorable was part of, that she chaired, the meeting that she chaired. But there's a statement that was made by Sarah Birete, a very, very distinguished woman. She made a statement and was like, this continent has over 50 plus speakers. I don't remember the number she stated, but allow me to say 50 plus speakers. And I think she mentioned a number, I think around 30 something of them have said no to this bill, you know, but they have not been singled out, not even one of them, for any of these allegations. Why is it that for us in Uganda, when we are having corruption allegations, that is the first place we run to? Why is it always our place of solace that we are going to run to? You know, we are looking for someone to point a finger at. You know, what does that tell you? Incompetent and incoherent administration of public affairs. And it has become bad to an extent that people no longer care, you know. And the reason as to why I was saying, Philip, that the problem is starting from the grassroots, and us as Ugandans, we are involved in all of this. You know, when you go to the villages, me have been involved in elections. I've been involved in an election, you know, in the village, and the things that happen there are laughable, Philip. When time for an election comes, people are going to be given as little as 1,000 shillings. Here in Kampala, in a day, you cannot survive on 1,000 shillings. You cannot. Of course, there are people who find...
Don't specify in Kampala, in Uganda.
Maybe in the village, you can maybe branch off to someone's garden, pick something to eat. You end up surviving. But in Kampala here, you cannot survive on 1K a day. You know? But in the village, you go to the villages, and these are people who are... These villages are the ones that are producing the most corrupt leaders. Sorry to say. But the people that are being involved in all these corrupt scandals are people who are leading, sorry to say, but villagers, you know, as someone would call them, you know. It's not an offensive term, it's English. But you find that they're being given 1,000 shillings, and on the voting day, they change their mindset from who they are going to vote, but because of this 1K, you know, 1,000 shillings, they go and the reason as why I'm mentioning 1,000 is because I have seen it. I have seen it. I would have mentioned any other amount, but 1,000 shillings.
What does it do?
What does it do exactly? Someone would ask, you know. But when we come up and now start saying that these leaders are the ones torturing us, then the entire country has a problem. We have a very big problem, as I said. And if we don't find a way of remedying it right from the grassroots, Philip, this is only just beginning. By the time people are now coming out, you know, at this point they are coming out, what is going to happen 2 years from now? What will be the case? What will be the norm? You know?
Thank you. Kuule.
Yes,
If I'm to interject, to me, I'm thinking the problem is not about discussing whether or not the statements are bad or good, because they are bad. It is like, actually, they are unnecessary and uncalled for by our leader, because it is like asking yourself whether black is black. And yet it is black. You all know that. The question, I think, should be, why should she openly say it out like that.
Why
Like,
shouldn't she?
why should, like,
Why shouldn't she, honestly?
You,
Because
you already talked about a glass house.
yes, now
So
that's
why
where I'm
not?
coming to. So, in Uganda, we are now in a state of, should I say, impunity, where people no longer feel like, okay, they no longer care whether something is good or bad. If it is bad, they bring it out like that. So it is upon us.
But why shouldn't she? Because even after making those statements, people will still cheer on.
Yeah, people were cheering.
Eh? You know, we take
Thumbs
things for
up.
granted in this country, Philip. You know, there was a member of parliament in this country. May his soul rest in peace. When he was coming in for the election, I think that was in was it 2015?
16.
2016. Sorry, 2016. He came and said that in his campaigns, profound. Everyone knew. He used to tell people, vote for me this term, I go and I eat. Then when next term comes, we shall eat together. And what happened? He was voted. No manifesto, no nothing. Vote me, I go and I eat. Why? Because he's telling the truth. And people clapped. They thought he was joking. You know, so when he came back to eat with them, unfortunately, they didn't send him back. But that kind of unseriousness.
Yeah, in Uganda, you're serious alone.
Taking
They
things
have
for
that
granted.
saying that you're serious alone in Uganda.
In Uganda, you're serious alone. So,
In Uganda,
You're
you are
serious.
serious
Alone.
alone. Thank you for keeping it the Inter-University Debates on Civic Space TV. We're heading into a very short break and we shall be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We are fearing to
Welcome back from that short break. It is the Inter-University Debates on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today we are discussing corruption and some comments that came out from a couple of leaders in this country. Some saying, you know, if someone steals and they share with you, it is okay. Others saying, you know, we have to celebrate these people. And I know there is a Thanksgiving ceremony being prepared when that honorable member of parliament is released from prison. There has to be a Thanksgiving ceremony, but also another comment, particularly from the speaker, saying the president is listening to your cries and very soon he's going to respond to you and make sure your daughter is okay. And indeed, she should be the member of parliament of this district forever. Joining me on that conversation is Kinobere, Mackline, and Kuule. Colleagues, where we left off, we are discussing some of these funny, shabby, ugly, not so nice things that are happening in our country. But you see, we can discuss parliament. But we know, like Andrew said earlier, corruption is not new, and it is everywhere in this country. When you go to the districts out there, if you need a job at the district, you must bribe someone. If you need a contract to supply something to government, you need to either know someone or bribe someone. Even at a school, getting some schools recently in Kampala here and across the country, if you need to get a spot for your child, you bribe someone. You go to the hospital, you bribe someone to get medicine. Bribe, you go on the road, the traffic officer is bribed. Talk about embezzlement, talk about the misuse of office, because corruption is more than taking money for the road. There are people who are allowing cars that are in dangerous mechanical conditions to drive on the road because they were given 5,000 shillings. There are people who are using government cars to operate their private farms. The other day I saw an allegation, someone through the parliament requisitioned and indeed was given about 500+ million shillings to purchase generators and construct fences on private, homesteads and a series of things. It is not just at the top here in Parliament. Even at the LOC1, there are services you're supposed to get free of charge, but you drive there, you walk there, this chairperson will tell you, oh, without something, you will not get this. This is so deep, Kuule. It is so deep. And
yes, Mr. Phillip, there is a saying that there must be a point whereby the road can no longer sustain itself. For example, you might be having a road where you put your things, you hang huge things, and it is able to withstand the stress from the material you are hanging on that road. But there's a point whereby after adding those huge things and the road is sustaining the stress, you will just pick a small grass, you add on the huge things, and the road will break.
The physicians will talk about when it goes beyond the elastic limit and
yes.
so on.
So there is a point when the road can no longer sustain itself. The truth is, Ugandans, when you talk about corruption, it's not something that is very new.
So does that mean we are still able to sustain the...
That's what I'm heading to. We saw this, the Global Fund, we have seen the recently Mavat scandals. Yeah? We're looking at the cash bonanzas at Parliament. We are looking at the recent one, open...
If you are mentioning corruption scandals, you could mention Gavi, you could mention Temanga,
yes, name them. Some of them were even occurring before we were born. And we just read...
As far as 1980, there are a series of them. If I started reading a list that I have here, you will be surprised.
It will take for us the whole show. Now, that's why I'm saying that there is a point whereby the road can no longer sustain itself.
When is that point?
The point is just now.
Does it look like it's now?
Mr. Phillip, I want you to look at this. One, look at the Uganda Parliament exhibition. Look at the very recent hashtag that is on now, text the thief. This is something that is out of the observation that the corrupt that we are fighting is willing to stand in solidarity with the fellow corrupt officials to make sure that they continue oppressing us. Secondly, this has made the citizens, the victims, the negative victims of corruption, discover that the opponent we are fighting, who is corruption, is strategized and is willing to do all he can do to ensure that he continues looting us.
I mean, Kuule, you see, it is important to do something about this corruption.
Yes.
Text the thief.
Yes.
I have 1 billion shillings in my house. You text me. What does it change?
There is something we call peace of mind. You can have that 1 billion shillings in your house, but when your mind is not peaceful, you will actually not even think of what you should use it for. And definitely the revolution will begin. We shall retrieve back that 1 billion.
Kuule, peaceful. Aren't we getting satisfied way too little?
Philip, get me right. I said there is a point when the road can no longer sustain its, itself.
The weight.
So we are just there. We are just there at that point. One, basing on the scandals that are in the country, citizens now are aware that the priorities of the NRM government are in favor of a specific glitch of people, a specific group of people that will make sure that the NRM is perpetuated in power. That one is evident because look at this, the 571.2, I mean 0.34 billion that was used in the procurement of generators for 3 regional referrals. 571 for procurement of Jinja, Kabale, and Mbale regional referral hospitals. These are big regional referral hospitals.
Yeah.
But look at the 2 generators that costed government 591. So we are looking at 571.
And indeed, maybe for clarity, that
Yes.
particular instance you are referring to, the 3 were actually of a higher capacity
Yes.
than these ones, because the 2 are at 80,
80
and the other ones were 250. So
Yes. So that alone sheds the picture that, 1, the government has its own priorities. 2, citizens are aware that, we are aware. It is not that the citizens do
what
not
are you
know.
calling government? Because this is, are you referring to parliament as government, and this is the priority?
Mr.
Are you
Phillip,
referring to the parliamentary commission or
Yes.
the entire cabinet setup and so on?
Mr. Phillip, I think you remember when Miss Betty Kamya, the IGG, made a comment about lifestyle audit.
Yes.
And you well know that there was a refuting statement from the head of state, Mr. Museveni. So we all know where corruption is.
She called it a warning or
So
a caution.
So
in the words of
yes,
the IGG.
whatever I called it, but at least you are aware of that whole saga, and you can easily make a conclusion that the problem of corruption is the head of the state himself. However, recently, he is trying to make sure that he shows us a picture of him fighting corruption. I hope you get me right.
Cool, a
He
picture.
is trying to show us a picture that he is fighting corruption.
Members of parliament are in prison. We have ministers that are in
You
courts
see,
of law.
Mr. Phillip, yes, ministers are in courts of law, members of parliament are detained, but statements are being made.
Statements
Reckless
like they don't
statements
have the
in
proof
defense
yet.
of corruption. Reckless statements in defense of corruption. And we all know that if you want
Not
to talk
by
about...
the president.
Mr. Phillip, let me first come before you tell me you're not by the president. When you look at parliament, we all know, and the entire country knows, that the chief of the corrupt at the parliament of Uganda is the Right Honorable Speaker.
I'm not aware.
You're not aware? Yes, at least you should be aware now by the statement she made in Luengo. That one should make you aware that she is the chief or the head of the corruption in the parliament of Uganda. Because she is, I remember you recently, before we went for the break, you told me that she has the right to defend a member of parliament, yes? Meaning that she is the one heading parliament. Literally, if we had working structures, a member of parliament is not supposed to be summoned to CID or detained without a notification to the Right Honorable. We had her recently in the parliamentary sitting saying that members of parliament should be summoned through her, meaning that initially it was just being done without her being notified. You get the point? So we know that we know that when you talk about corruption at parliament, it is the Right Honorable that we are supposed to question. But now, that's why I said that the president is showing us a picture that he is trying to fight corruption because he really knows that the corruption is the Right Honorable, who is even evidently sanctioned. The UK has sanctioned the Right Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Let me bring in Mackline. Mackline, Kuule says the president is showing us a picture, but let's widen this scope. Are we now fighting corruption, especially at the leadership level? Because, like Kinobere told us, corruption is everywhere, with everyone. Even everyone is capable of being corrupt. Are we, because we have ministers in courts, we have members of parliament, we have lawyers, we have other civil servants in courts of law. We are fighting. We have the hashtags he talks about: text the thief, make the thief uncomfortable, make the oppressor uncomfortable. Very many things are running on social media. Have Ugandans finally woken up to fight corruption?
On the face of it, yes, on the face of it, on the look of things. But there is something behind. If you say ministers are in courts of law, They have not yet been convicted yet.
There's a court process.
There is a court process, but they don't even have proof. The president made a statement and is like, we don't have proof yet, but if we get it, of course they will be punished. And then the speaker comes in and says, if our children go and eat, provided they come back home with something, is that really fighting corruption? Or it is encouraging corruption, like advocating for corruption?
Look, this speaker could say what she says. She's one of the about 50 million Ugandans. The Honorable Chinyamatama, the Honorable Daudi Kavanda, the president himself. But look, we have institutions in the country. We have the IGG he just talked about.
Okay.
We have the anti-corruption unit.
If I may interject,
yes,
we have them. We really have them. We have the IGG. But the problem we have is that there is a lot of political interference in these things. Recently, in the news, in the New Vision, the front page, there was that 9 trillion is being lost in corruption, only corruption, 9 trillion. So I think the IGG, however much they would want to fight corruption, first, there is no transparency in them. Second, there is a lot of political interference. So if at all the speaker stands up and says, the president says this and this, he will punish his people. And after punishing them, of course, they will come back. So what do you think the IGG will do? Of course, the IGG is acting under the president, under the speaker. Like I don't know. She's acting under them. So there is a lot of political interference in this. And if it is still there, corruption is still there.
Well, Andrew, let's look at this. If members of parliament being arrested is not enough, if ministers facing courts of law is not enough, if citizens running online campaigns is not enough, what can be enough or effective in the fight against corruption in this country?
Thank you very much. Allow me refer to one of the biggest economies that I started with. You know, America, the United States of America, and before the second industrial revolution, you know, there was a lot happening. So many wars. Their economy was very, very down. And after the second industrial revolution, it became worse with the likes of Rockefeller and JP Morgan fueling this corruption and dominating the economy. So in order to stay dominant in the economy, they had to corrupt the leaders that were there to make policies that favored them. When Roosevelt came in as president, he came in an era which was referred to as the progressive era. And Roosevelt came up with something that was called the Progressive Party. With the Progressive Party, he came with something he was calling progressive reforms. I want us to know the keyword progressive, progressive reforms. And these progressive reforms were political and economical in nature. You know, political in the sense that there was empowering of voters, you know. There was empowering of people who are involved in each and every electoral process, yes? So that to prevent things such as corrupting of leaders and all that from happening, yes? And he did this with the economy too. To one extent that even when Wilson Woodrow came in and won an election against Roosevelt, you know, he took up the progressive kind of the progressive reforms that were adopted by Roosevelt. So what do we need in this country? Because because me, I disagree. Ugandans, we're not yet doing enough to show that we're not contented with the corruption that is happening. These Twitter hashtags and what, those are jokes.
You see, if you allow me, you bring in that history and it's so interesting and you know I love it. Roosevelt, Wilson, Woodrow did what they did. Today, there is an inquiry in the Senate of the United States about the head of the disease. It is called CDC. about Mr. Fauci related to COVID-19 and how he was allegedly bribed to allow for the measures that were put in place for COVID-19, including forcing people to wear masks, the vaccination, and he testified recently that all these were not based on science, and indeed maybe they were not necessary. This is 200 and how many years since Roosevelt? This is, you can talk about, we have Mr. Bill Gates, again allegedly bribing the agricultural organization in the United States to give him patent on seedling manufacturing and distribution in the United States. This is allegedly corruption in that part of the world that fought that much, like you say.
You see, I do not disagree. You see, when governments keep on changing, you know, you cannot have a perfect run, as they say. You cannot have a perfect run. You see, Dr. Anthony Fauci was working under the administration of Donald Trump. We all know how Donald Trump,
who is a convicted felon,
convicted felon with more than 70 charges. So Dr. Anthony Fauci was working under the administration of Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. Mr. Donald Trump, as we all know him, we know how he handled the COVID-19 pandemic. Very unseriously. That one has to be agreed upon. Very unseriously. To an extent that he himself contacted COVID-19. And that is when he started, because he had started telling people to start drinking bleach to help them kill COVID-19 from inside, making reckless statements. We cannot disagree with that. But the reason as to why I was referring to the and it's good you note that this has been 200 years. In those 200 years, the USA had great economic transformation. You know, we cannot disagree that COVID-19 and its effect came and now dwindled what had been built on, and maybe the bad leadership that they have experienced has also, you know, caused so many job insecurities and people losing their jobs and all that. But we cannot deny the fact that with those reforms that were progressive, because each and every president has kept on taking them on and making them better, you know, nothing like going down, but just improving and taking them higher.
What do you make of the notion that among the factors that led to the growth of those countries, including the United States, was actually the corruption?
Yes, the corruption was there. You know, corruption, even now, it is there. Even the best economies, even the toughest economies, when you talk about the likes of North Korea and South Korea, corruption is there, you know, but it is very, very limited. Because let me tell you something, Philip, we cannot do away with corruption. It would be a lie for us to sit down here and we say that we are going to deal away with corruption 100%. But what do we want? We want that when I go to Mulago Hospital, I am going to get the services I need. When I am driving in Kampala, I am not going to drive in zigzag manner because of the potholes. That is what we need, you know. We are not looking for perfect leaders. We are looking for leaders that are going to be able to do for us what we expect them to do for us.
Are those kind of leaders available in our populace?
In our populace, it would be a lie if I said that our leaders are actually chasing the benefits of the greater good. It would be a very big lie, you know. Reason being that these leaders have also been groomed by a system that is already rotten to the core. The system is already stinking. So everyone who is going through the system right now, you know, is getting that stink. And if we do not get those progressive reforms that are going to now shape better leaders, you know, leaders that are coming up, or even those that are already in power, then we are going to have a very, very, very big problem, you know.
Wow. Thank you. Kuule.
Yes, Mr. Phillip.
Progressive reforms, we are in a rotten system. How do we fight this corruption we could get to that level where at least the basic services are available in this country?
I think I will first make a very big, I don't know how I should call it, a comment about Comrade's submission that he thinks Ugandans are not yet there where they're supposed to make sure that they really see themselves doing something about corruption. So I would pose a question. Who are the Ugandans that you're referring to?
All of us.
I think when you talk of a Ugandan, you begin with yourself.
Yes.
So this is something that should be a question amongst ourselves. What are you doing? What are you trying to do? What are you doing as a Ugandan to ensure that you fight corruption? Definitely, it is evident that if we do not try to do something about corruption, this country is actually going to get out of our hands and it will get into the hands of the dogs. Because when you look at the budget itself, when you look at the Ugandan budget itself, you find we have a 15, a tenfold, whereby 15 billion is allocated for schools in the whole country. But we're having 134 billion allocated for luxurious, for parties, drinks of government officials. So that is a tenfold. So we fail to understand where the priorities of this.
Where does the mistake come in? Because
yes, Mr.
The Ministry of Education, allow me.
Yes.
The Ministry of Education has to the tune of 2.46 trillion in this budget.
Yes.
How does it end up to the schools at, you said 15?
Yes.
15 billion.
Yes.
Where does the other money go? What happens?
Is
it the budgeting?
Yes, it is the budget. This is public knowledge, whereby you see, when you look at the budget, money that will be used, in the improvement, development of infrastructures in these schools, it is 15 billion. But the budget for the Ministry of Education will go up to something 2 point something trillion. But much of this money is not targeting the local beneficiary. Much of it is actually for the activities of the officials within the ministry. So this is how we actually having a rotten system, whereby the government, the parliament, is able to approve a budget whereby the priority is not given to the citizen. The citizen, we are talking about someone who is contributing 44.9% of the total country budget. This is the person who is funding all these activities. A person who is paying Right Honorable Anita Among his salary. A person who is fencing the home of the Right Honorables.
Someone was saying this country, even when we cry about corruption, the whole country is in itself a scam. You prepare a budget of 72.1 trillion. URA is projecting to collect 31 trillion of the 72. But the previous year, where they had a projection of 29, they actually collected 23. So if you are able to collect 23, say they can collect the 31 this time, but your budget is 72 trillion. What are you even budgeting?
So, Mr. Phillip, we have a lot of unnecessary expenditure in the budget. We have a lot of unnecessary expenditure in the budget. The truth is, when you look at the debt we are having as a country, we are now in 93 point something trillion.
Actually 97.
Yes, 97 trillion. But the budget of this coming financial year is 72 trillion, right? Meaning that if we choose to get the whole money that is meant for the budget and we pay for the debt, we shall remain in negatives.
Don't forget that money, 47% of it we're going to borrow.
Yes, actually, the local collections are going to contribute 44.9%, meaning that the 51 is going to be borrowed. It is a debt that we're going to add. So this is supposed to make the government rethink in the way they should spend. Let the government review the expenditure. And this is what we are coming up with, Mr. Phillip. Maybe this is freedom. I think I can talk with this openly.
Please.
On 23rd, there is a march to Parliament. And we are petitioning government to rethink about the priorities of the country. Government should cut the expenditure. And we are stopping corruption. How are we stopping corruption? Members that are involved in these corruption scandals, we have seen someone evidently defending corruption. someone showing solidarity with the corrupt. So we are demanding for the immediate resignation.
Earlier you
of the
mentioned
Speaker.
that all the members of parliament have been directly or indirectly
Yes.
involved. Are you calling for the resignation of all the members
We are
of
saying,
parliament?
as we talk now, we know the Right Honorable Speaker is involved in corruption. The deputy is involved in unnecessary spending and, you know, projection of the priorities of the government from the citizen to something else that they think is good in their own thinking. So we are demanding for the immediate resignation of the Right Honorables of Parliament.
How feasible is this demand?
This, this demand is very achievable. You know, when you have your child and the child does not learn to copy, you know, we call it learning in biology. If the child does not have that art of imprinting, by the child can be able to follow the parent, the child can, copy some activities from the environment where he lives, from the people he sees, then you have to be, worried about that child. And as Ugandans, we have to say that we are children who learn. Look at Kenya. In Kenya, these are people who are well off, better than us, as far as priorities are concerned of their country, as far as the lifestyle, the minimum expenditure for someone to live in Kenya is much lower than the minimum expenditure for someone to live in Uganda. But these are the people that are trying to realize that there is something that is trying to tamper with the power of the people. And this is something that we have, been seated upon. I remember last time I told you that chui hakikumbatiwi. This is something that we have, yes, the leopard. You cannot sit on the leopard and think you will massage it and make it your friend. It will definitely be hungry and it will eat you. So we have been patient. But in the patience, I think we have been looked at as people who are stupid, people who cannot do something, people who do not know that actually power belongs to the people. So the citizens of Uganda have realized that for us to restructure everything, because in the country we have a very docile structure. We have the structure, yes, it is there, but it does not do as, as recommended. So we are saying that for us to make sure that this structure is actually restructured to an active one, we need to get back the power to ourselves. And we are beginning with the power of the parliament.
Well, we'll wait to see how feasible that is.
Yes, and actually I invite you.
Thank you for the invite. I'll think about it. Mackline, he talks about the priorities, and I want us to briefly talk about that in detail. When you look at our budget, you have monies put in there for a series of things. Among them is, you read things like donations at the Office of the Presidency, Office of the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Government Chief Whip, the Honorable Prime Minister. There is monies for buying vehicles for ministers, RDCs, members of parliament, commissioners, directors, etc. Fuel, maintenance of vehicles. Talk about money for meals, special meals for the different offices. A series of things. Are these the things we should be spending on at such a time in our country? And the sustainability, can we afford these in the long run?
First of all, at this moment, our country is going through a lot of economic hardships. So if in the budget, they are going to allocate money for donations, cars for the MPs, fuel, that is very unnecessary. You realize there are a lot of people outside here, because that is taxpayers' money. But then, as the taxpayers, people are suffering with poor roads, very, very poor schools. You go to the hospital, there is no medicine. You go to the hospital, the doctors are not there. they tell you, go back, you come back tomorrow, things like that. So instead of getting that money and put it to where the people's priorities are, what people look at, they're investing it in things that are uncalled for. Leaving that aside, all that, first of all, you don't have that money. You realize you're going to borrow the money. So instead of borrowing the money and investing it in things that would help us, they're actually looking at things that prioritize them, like things that benefit them. So to me, I would suggest, if at all they would let go of all that and at least look at...
For example, the presidency has about, in this new budget, about 132 billion meant for donations. Where best do you think that money could be taken other than being in for donations?
Of course, the money can be taken to schools, developing schools, because if all that money is in there...
But whom is he donating to?
Of course he's going to donate to
People of
himself.
his choice.
Why can't you give
You
services
realize
to the people?
if he's to even donate, he will donate to this, again, well of people, that this one, this and this, let me help him out. Instead of helping the primary person.
The other day he
I
agreed to
to
buy a
interject in
taxi
shortly.
for a certain gentleman.
Yes.
Interjecting shortly, what is the accountability for the president's donation?
There is an internal auditor in that department
You see,
of
there is
government.
something is not feasible. Yes, money is for donations, but how can we account for such money? It is better you put that money into improving the services, and then people will not even seek your donations because they have better services. By the way, Ugandans work a lot. It is only the government that is letting them down. When we have the required services, say the health and the education services, those basic services, Ugandans can have an improved lifestyle because we do work. But
Yes,
the services
the
are
hard
letting
work.
us down, and that is the government.
And there is no way we shall develop with such without the president's donation being accounted. Where has he taken them? How shall we know? Of course we shall not know. And at the end of the day, that's when he invests in people that already have, living as suffering.
Well, Andrew, the sustainability of this spending, the colleagues are against the donations. I'm sure you've seen the president donating to churches, given us 50 million, but sustainability, when you look at this, people getting huge sums of money in terms of salaries. You see people, the size of parliament, over 500, I think, is it 529?
529
members of parliament. You buy a vehicle for each, you pay salary, you buy fuel, you buy airtime, you give allowances, 81 ministers, RDCs, commissioners, directors of institutions.
Assistant deputy RDCs.
Yes. And then
In
we
the
cry
parliament,
that we
even
have,
the
I
assistants
know
have assistants.
you were a lawyer. We always cry of case backlogs in the judiciary, and the main reason is we don't have enough judges. But we have all these other offices and we are facilitating them. How feasible, how sustainable is this kind of spending for our economy, even when we cry about corruption?
Thank you very much, Philip. Now, when we are talking about Uganda, Uganda is undeniably a poor country. But then you have things such as, let us even put the donations aside. We have some of the city tycoons in this country. We have, you find that the government is rendering billions of money that are not going to be paid back to a one-Sudir Rupalaria more than once. The first time was to develop Speak Resort Munyonyo. For Chogam. The second time now, in the recent times when they are constructing the convention for the NAM summits and the G77 plus meetings and all that. And this money is not in form of a loan advancement. It is money that is given to him to develop. This is someone we call an investor. He came to invest in the country. He's investing in the country using our own resources. And
we are doomed.
And the assumption is that this money, the profits that come from this money, the only thing that we can say we get from the place, maybe through taxation, which is also questionable.
You see, what you raise is interesting. For example, if we give money to Sudil, I know you've heard about bailouts around town. This tycoon A is struggling financially, government comes in with the billions. The most recent is about a certain hotel
that
called
hotel.
Pearl of Africa.
Pearl of Africa.
We are seeking to bail this person who came in the country.
And
We gave them free land. We guaranteed them to borrow money to construct a hotel. Later they take another loan we do not know about, and now we have to bail them out. But also talk about a series of others. We have someone, Vinci, the one mandated to construct a hospital in Lubowa.
The one buying the coffee deal.
We gave them money, we gave them land, we gave them everything. All they have to do is to construct. How do we end up into such deals as a country?
You see, you talked about bailouts. Yeah. Now, a bailout, I don't think the government has taken time to understand the nature of bailouts and who and why they're supposed to bail out someone. You know, some of these so-called bailouts are very, very unnecessary. You know, because we presume that the service that that person is providing is one that is essential to the government, to the country's survival. In that, if we don't bail out this person, the government and the country is most likely going to lose out so much on the services that are being offered. There is no reason for the government to incur such an expense of bailing out a hotel. It's not even a 5-star hotel. There's no need. You know, first of all, even from the beginning, there is the giving of the land for the construction of the hotel and giving money. Why would you give an investor money? The giving of the land is very okay, because we want you to come and invest into our country. But you coming and ask, that means that even me, if I went with my idea, you know, to the president or to any office that is in charge of giving that money, and I sell to them my idea, they're supposed to give me money and the land so that I can construct. But that is not supposed to be the case. That is not investing.
There was a school of thought that was saying, government keeps, like you said, gives money to people like Sudil to construct hotels. Instead of us bailing out this person, why don't we just buy the hotel and it becomes property of Uganda?
And which is also not supposed to be the case. Exactly. Because the government is not supposed to run things such as hotels. You know, those things are supposed to be privatized. We're supposed to have privatization of certain things. You know, so it is individuals who are capable. They are capable individuals in Uganda that can take on such investments. You see, we have had certain institutions that have left the country, you know, because they have not been bailed out. You know, if it was something concerning health services, for example, if Nakasero came and said that they were dying with a loan and they needed to be bailed out, there would totally be no problem with the government actually coming in. However, even with the coming in, what percentage is going to remain with the government? Not bailing out someone, you're adding someone more money, but they're still running their affairs. That is why we have the notions of, that property belongs to the first family because of this and this and that. And why shouldn't Ugandans presume such things?
There are companies where we bought shares.
Yes, if you have an NM government, those are the things you hear. Because certain things don't make sense at all. You see? So you ask me about the feasibility and whether the economy will be able to handle such. And the question is that it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time when you have a budget whereby the debt burden cannot sustain, you know, whereby the debt burden is way too big. With time, it is going to swallow up the economy completely.
Because I was looking at, for example, URA is projected to collect 31, but the amount we are supposed to pay in debt financing, or in other words, paying profit on the debt we have, is 34 trillion.
You see now that is where problems start from. And if we do not address that issue as soon as possible, you know, prioritize where the expenditures are supposed to be, Uganda is going to be, we are going to have one of the worst economic depression crises this continent has ever seen. That one I can say, because it has become too much. and it is becoming so bad very fast. You know, if you look at the rate at which the Ugandan shilling is depreciating, if you look at the rate at which the Ugandan shilling is depreciating, you know, compared to our neighbors, the Kenyans, and all the others, it is really worrying. It is really worrying. So,
Wow.
with time, it is going to crumble, and if we do not address it, even the people who are their money is going to reach a point when it's useless. And if they do not run somewhere else for solace, they are going to be in this country and they will suffer with the rest of the Ugandans.
Well, thank you. Briefly, Mackline, recently we have a very common vice that has come in the country called service awards. Every officer, after the end of their tenure, there is a service award. Service award, service award. How did we get here, and is it a necessary, you know, kind of situation we have to get into?
Thank you so much. How did we get there? I've been hearing of those service awards, but those people are there to serve. That is why they are there. So why would you award them? Because they are already there. That is what they are supposed to do.
They are awarded for the service.
But that is what you're supposed to do. If you're a teacher, you're supposed to teach.
Well, interesting,
Yes.
gentlemen, and I know you're going to have comments on that one, but our time is very much fast spent. We have about 5 minutes to get out of here. I want, in these concluding minutes, Kuule, yes, about the service awards. You know, one of the things that I interestingly realize, an office that is being given a service award, this person had a strong salary. This person was facilitated car, fuel, and so on. The office is pensionable.
They
have retirement.
Various committees.
They have retirement benefits at this office, but even at the end, you find something extra. There's recently something in the ministry, in the investments ministry. There's something they're proposing for the Auditor General. We saw something for the Leader of Opposition and many other offices.
You see, Mr. Phillip,
Where are we heading?
you're actually drawing me to a point I made that
Briefly.
yes,
Like,
briefly,
yeah.
we need to appreciate negatively, on a sad note, that we have actually misused our power as citizens. One, we gave powers to the leaders. So this power that we gave to the leaders has been associated to leaders thinking that it is an opportunity for them to gain wealth. So that is one big mistake that the citizens of Uganda have made, and this is because of the picture that has constantly been drawn by the president, His Excellency Museveni. In the fight against corruption, there is no need to beat around the bush. Probably Mr. Museveni is beating around the bush because, if you're fighting corruption in parliament, you have to begin with the Right Honorable Speaker. So he's probably beating around the bush because we know that the Right Honorable Speaker is heading a full arm of government, and probably there could be, the reason for beating around the bush could be because there is a secret behind that. Probably His Excellency does not want the Right Honorable Speaker to
Is it
reveal.
the president to fight corruption or the institutions?
In Uganda, the president has taken over power of the institutions. You saw the IGG had suggested lifestyle audit, which would effectively fight corruption, but the president shut it down. So it is the president, being hard on the fight of corruption that we are seeing the arrests of MPs. So he is the one fighting corruption. That is public knowledge.
A few at his
So we are
expense.
saying that this beating around the bush could be because the president is having a secret with the Right Honorable Speaker that he is scared that the Right Honorable Speaker will get annoyed and reveal to the citizen, and definitely that should be a very bad secret. Secondly, it could be probably because there is a failure in the win-win situation that they probably agreed upon. Thirdly, it could be probably because the president is trying to push on something to confuse the Ugandans. It should be like the speaker is assuming the president will forgive the corrupt, but me, I'm fighting the corruption. You get? So that the Ugandans, the citizens can get confused. But we are making this clear, Mr. Phillip, and I'm repeating this.
Just
that,
briefly.
That on 23rd of July, we are having a march to Parliament and we are stopping corruption. And I call upon Mr. Museveni that this time it is going to be a different case. It is going to be a different case, and these are our enemies in the fight against corruption. Anyone who is involved in any corruption scandal is the enemy of the citizen. Anyone who tries to justify corruption, anyone who tries to justify corruption is an enemy of the oppressed citizen. Anyone who shies away to condemn corruption is an enemy of the citizen. Anyone who fails to condemn corruption because probably the relative or a friend is involved is an enemy of the citizen. And finally, anyone who deliberately refuses to talk about corruption and stays neutral over it is an enemy to the citizen. So we want to make sure that we fight this together because we have a unifying point. We are not looking at political parties because this is not non-partisan. It is something that is uniting the Ugandans. Our unifying problem is corruption. Be it People Power, be it NRM, be it PLOU, be it ANT, be it FDC, be it JEMA, be it UPC, be it DP. Our problem now, our unifying problem is corruption.
Well,
so on 23rd, we are getting together to make sure that we march to Parliament and fight this.
23rd June.
July.
July.
Yes.
Okay, 23rd July, the colleague and many of our other friends will have that match. Mackline, you know, one of the things I grew up looking at, and if you've ever been to the village, you will either have, there was a mango tree in the forest, and indeed there was also a jackfruit tree. We did nothing about these trees in terms of weeding, pruning, watering, you know, adding fertilizer to the soil to be able to pick something. But what happened was we could only wait for the season when there are ripe mangoes. We go beat the bush and pick these mangoes. And indeed the mangoes would be there every time a season came. And it so happened with a couple of other plants. Are we waiting? Are we treating this vice the same way? Are we just comfortable and waiting for the fruits? Maybe someone will fight it and we end up having a good country.
Thank you so much. Not really. Now, as for corruption, you cannot sit and wait because it will not end if you keep on sitting and watching. So that is why I concur with him. You begin slowly by slowly. You know, if you want something to progress, you begin slowly and it keeps on progressing. So one, those campaigns, I'm sure when they see that, it will alert them. They will know that the citizens are oppressed. Enough is enough, actually. They will know enough is enough. They've had enough. By the time someone leaves their work and comes to the parliament for a campaign, just know they have been through a lot.
The anger has reached.
The anger has reached that point, the maximum point. So those campaigns, I believe, it is a very good step.
Thank you. And Andrew, as we get out of here, the corruption, the statements that walk around it, and the reactions from both the citizens and the presidency, do you see a brighter future?
Thank you very much. Now, of course, there's always a bright side to each and everything, you know. And with every revolution that begins, yeah, it may take long, but at the end of the day, even if it takes years and years, there's always a bright side. So we just need to get a little bit more serious. Me, I will not keep on emphasizing. I will not stop emphasizing that, you know, because it is everyone's responsibility, and it starts with you, you know. First, put alone all these campaigns and what, but if it doesn't start with you, and we also, okay, let's say everything is successful, we put out these leaders that we say are corrupt, you know. Then we put in new leaders, you know, and at the end of the day, they are doing the same thing. Are the revolutions and riots going to be the order of the day? That each time we put in someone new, we realize that they were the same, just like, so it starts with us, you get, because let me tell you something, that whether violent or non-violent riots and protests, that is not the resolve to corruption. It has never been. But what happens after is what is going to resolve corruption. As I told you, in Chad, they overthrew 2 presidents. There was Hussein, if I'm pronouncing the name right, and Deby in 1900. And they were alleging that these people were very corrupt and that they had plundered the country's oil resources. However, the presidents they kept on getting were still doing the same. You know, that is just one of the examples of the many.
Including the current.
Yes, including the current. You know, that is just an example of a place where revolutions have happened, but they have changed nothing. You know, so it starts with us. It's your social responsibility to know that if I am placed somewhere, you know, I am not supposed to do certain things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. It is up to us to know that it is our social responsibility to do something so that this country progresses well in the right direction. Kinobere, thank you so much for the views and for making time to be here today. Mackline, thank you so much for your views and for being here today. And Kuule, thank you so much for your views and for being with us today. And to your viewers, thank you so much for keeping it the Inter-University Debates on Civic Space TV. Special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance for always supporting us in this cause, and special thanks to the people behind the machines. We continue to call for peace in all the regions of the world where there is turmoil. A lot of them in Sudan, in the DRC, in the Chad, in Libya, in Ukraine, in Gaza, in Iran, and wherever there is war, there is turmoil. We call for peace and we say, peace is the only sustainable way to keep and grow humanity. From us, we say good evening and may you have freedom always.